Hi, it's me again, Guangying Liu, senior writer of Commonwealth Magazine. Thank you, Pei Hua and Jordan Rees, for the wonderful remarks and insights. So now, with the panel discussion, we would like to shift our focus on the goals set at COP26. So before mid-21st century, the world must achieve net zero emissions and limit global warming within 1.5 degrees Celsius. I would like to welcome Vincent Liu, President and CEO of LCY Group. And let's welcome George Lian, President of Teco Electric Machinery. And also, we have a distinguished guest, a gentleman sitting next to me. His name is Ed Yeager, Director of Trade and Investment at the Canadian Trade Office in Taipei. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to talk about Canada's advantages from the perspective of business operations. What does Canada have to offer that makes it an important new investment opportunity for LCY Group and Teco, and possibly many more Taiwanese companies? Canada has been really aggressive in trying to attract foreign investment. So could you talk a little bit about what Canada has to offer in terms of facilitating net zero emissions and how to attract investment from Taiwan?
Certainly, Guangying. Thank you very much for this opportunity. As Jordan mentioned in his presentation, Canada is committed to achieve net zero emission by 2050. But that isn't something that the government of Canada can achieve all alone. It requires the support and engagement from all stakeholders, including all levels of government, federal, provincial, and municipal, as well as civil society and business. And therefore, the federal government has announced policies to encourage business and academic communities to take action and to develop technologies and infrastructures to achieve the goal. So among other things, the Canadian government has come out with the Canadian Net Zero Emission Accountability Act. This legislation enshrines in law the Government of Canada's commitment to achieve net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050, and it provides a framework of accountability and transparency to deliver on it. It requires that we reduce emissions by 40 to 45% below 2005 levels by 2030 to help meet our Paris Agreement obligations, and it establishes a requirement to set national emissions reduction targets for 2035, 2040, and 2045, 10 years in advance. And because the government is holding itself accountable for this commitment, the Minister of Environment and Climate Change needs to report to our Parliament with our progress. Furthermore, the government also has announced in its budget of 2021 a plan to provide subsidies to encourage communities and businesses to contribute to relevant infrastructure and technologies. And we believe these plans create opportunities for Taiwanese investors to invest or expand their investments in Canada. Now, Canada was commonly seen as a strong resource sector participant, heavily concentrated on traditional, non-eco-friendly resources. We're aware of that past and are committed to an energy transition. And this is why we have invited LCY and Teco, who are corporations actively involved in Canada's transition to a greener economy. Well, let me talk a little bit, if I may, about the advantages of investing in Canada, which I think can be summarized here as support for innovation and talent. First, to support net zero innovation and R&D, Canada's Strategic Innovation Fund supports R&D, commercialization, and collaboration activities for large projects, and with $7.2 billion of new funding proposed in the 2021 budget, it contains over $10 billion in support for net zero manufacturing. In particular, that includes up to $8 billion to be granted through the Net Zero Accelerator Fund for decarbonizing large emitters and adoption of clean technology. Additional support for innovative projects across all sectors includes $1.75 billion to aerospace, $1 billion to biomanufacturing, plus an additional $1 billion on a cash basis to support private sector investment in clean tech products. Current or potential Taiwanese-owned Canadian companies would be eligible for these programs. In addition, we have a scientific research and experimental development incentive. Canada has one of the richest innovation support programs in the world to help SMEs dedicate to R&D projects. This fund has up to $3 billion a year and includes 100% tax credits for eligible R&D work. Furthermore, there's a Clean Fuels Fund, a proposed $1.5 billion to support hydrogen and biofuels, plus a new tax credit for capital invested in carbon capture, utilization, and storage projects, and for hydrogen production. And through talent, Canada already has the most educated workforce in the OECD, with more than 56% of the population with a post-secondary education. Nevertheless, the government is dedicating $2.2 billion to help build Canada's talent pipeline, research systems, and support for life sciences firms, as well as $1.4 billion to provide access to skills, training, and advisory services. One of these programs goes by the name of MyTax. MyTax is a program to help industries identify suitable talent and will cover up to 50% of the salary cost for appropriately qualified interns and researchers. In addition, our global skill strategy helps industries in Canada to obtain work permits for employers to hire highly skilled global talent globally. And furthermore, other programs include infrastructure investments, where the budget proposed $1.9 billion to recapitalize the National Trade Corridors Fund in support of transportation infrastructure investments, in addition to the $1 billion in support for the rapid rollout of broadband projects. There are taxation incentives. There's a 50% reduction in income tax rates for businesses that manufacture zero-emission technologies. And especially for the EV battery supply chain, there's a proposed $9.5 million for the creation of a critical battery mineral center of excellence, another $36.8 million for R&D to advance critical battery mineral processing and refining expertise, and $56.1 million to support zero-emission vehicle charging and fueling stations, are all part of Canada's strategic EV initiatives. In addition to all of that, there's also other national innovation strategies, including the world's first pan-Canadian AI strategy and the recently launched National Quantum Strategy, and of course, the innovative supercluster initiatives that in total around $1.15 billion has been proposed and allocated to attract international investments to join our plan.
Wow, thank you, Ed. I believe these initiatives and subsidies must look very attractive for the aspiring Taiwanese companies who would like to invest in Canada. So now I would like to invite Vincent Liu of LCY Group, President and CEO, to give a testimony of their investment in Canada. Lcy Biosciences is a subsidiary of LCY Group,李长荣化工. They purchased facilities and equipment from BioEmber, a company in Sarnia, Canada. And since 2018, they have reactivated the production of biochemical raw materials and received orders from international customers, such as a world-renowned coffee chain. So Sarnia is a beautiful city in the southwestern Ontario, close to the Canada-US border, and it has a vibrant cluster for oil refineries and chemical plants. The booming chemical industry provides a major boost to the local economy, and it makes up nearly 40% of the value generated by Canada's chemical industry. Because of this, Sarnia is sometimes called the Chemical Valley. So I'm going to ask a question to Vincent. So we know that BioEmber pioneered the technique of producing succinic acid through the fermentation of corn syrup. Yes. I would like to ask you, so after the acquisition of the company, how was LCY Biochemicals able to reduce operational costs and increase production by optimizing the manufacturing process?
Yes.
So yeah, could you talk about some of the achievements and challenges?
Sure. Yeah, thank you very much. This plant used corn syrup as a raw material, so this is renewable chemicals. And using a fermentation process, we have a proprietary technique to really excellent this work. So after we launched the production 2 years ago, we have now reached a record high production volume of this succinic acid. The succinic acid is a very unique product. It's a renewable material, and you can combine that with the butanediol. Then you create a bio-PBS as biodegradable plastics. So this is a use in the packaging world that you don't worry about the plastic waste because this can naturally degrade it within 180 days. So ever since that we took over, we have improved the yield and we have also improved the quality of products. So now the products go even further to the new application like artificial leather. And for the artificial leather, this is also, so to speak, a claim renewable material, and that is a trend, and that is also a main purpose to meet net zero 2050 challenging. We're on track on this journey to the net zero 2050.
Thank you, Vincent. It's very comforting to know that just by buying coffee every day, we're not creating more trash for the earth.
That's true.
Yeah, so, okay, so thank you, Vincent, for your remarks. And next, I would like to invite George Lien, the president of TECO Electric and Machinery. So many people probably don't know, but TECO operates a motor factory actually in Canada for many decades. So last year, Commonwealth Magazine did a cover story on electric vehicles. So we are saying that the Taiwanese companies don't need to be Tesla to produce electric vehicles. So TECO is actually a manufacturing giant for motors across the world. It makes more than 20 billion NT dollars every year from selling motors alone. From electric power plants and nuclear power plants to the elevators of the Burj Khalifa in Dubai, the motors they use are all made by TECO. So we should all be very proud of that. So the TECO Westinghouse Motors Canada is located in Edmonton, Alberta, in Canada. Now, I would like to ask Mr. Lien the question. How has the engineering knowledge of the Canadian team contributed to the smooth running of operations, especially as it pertains to the broader trend of achieving net zero emissions for TECO?
Thank you. Firstly, TECO has been in Canada doing the operation since 1996. So currently our team actually are fully localized. We have Canadian MD, we have all the Canadian employee. And to support Canada's commitment to its carbon nature goal, this is TECO's mission to work with our Canadian customers together to come up with an energy saving solution to achieve the goal. And we also support the electrification trend. We provide sales installation of electrical motor, high efficiency one, and control across all Canada. TECO Canada has their operating bases located in Edmonton, Cambridge, Ontario, and Montreal in Quebec. Currently, we had a team of 51 employees, of which 18 are dedicated to providing the customer with engineering, technical, and industrial application support. And our team actually has average of more than 15 years electrical motor and control experience in Canada market. Cooperate to TECO in Canada over the past 25 years, TECO Canada has built a strong reputation as for electrification solution, electrical motor, high efficiency one, and energy saving, controls equipment to the oil and gas, mining, pulp and paper, and manufacture industry in Western and Eastern Canada, and including the Atlantic provinces. From TECO corporate office in Taipei to TECO in Canada, we are committed to energy conservation and emissions reduction through our pursuit of the sustainable corporate development.
Thank you, George, for the remarks. So we have heard the testimonies from two big companies that have invested in Canada. And now I have another question for Ed. We know that Canada has always focused on environmental protection and sustainability. In an effort to combat climate change, the Canadian government passed the Canadian Net Zero Emissions Accountability Act in July 2020. Its goal is to achieve net zero emissions by 2050. To encourage international investment in Canada, the government has provided various subsidies, including the $3 billion that were announced in 2020. Another $5 billion Canadian dollars were added as part of the Net Zero Accelerator program in 2021. These subsidies go towards encouraging large emitters to reduce emissions and adopt clean technology that will contribute to the circular economy, which is exactly what LCY is doing. So there is an additional 1.5 billion Canadian dollars in the Clean Fuels Fund, which supports investments in hydrogen energy, biomass, and carbon capture utilization and storage, CCUS technologies. Tax credit is also provided to support clean hydrogen production. So my question for Ed is, how can Taiwanese companies participate in these investment opportunities?
Well, that's a good question. Thank you very much. As I mentioned before, the advantages of investing in Canada is our strength in innovation and talent. And to that here, I'd like to add inclusiveness. And by inclusiveness, I do not just mean the cultural diversity of Canada, but also the access to the global market that companies in Canada have via the 15 trade agreements that Canada has signed with 2/3 of the world. Now, in his opening remarks, Jordan made reference to the fact that Canada will be the home of the world's first net zero carbon emissions ethylene plant after Dow Chemicals announced their investment in Alberta. And that's an example of the thing that we'd like to brag about, and to use it also as a testimonial to invite Taiwanese companies to look at Canada. But with regard specifically to how Taiwanese companies can participate in Canada's net zero, I can think of a few ways. First of all, with respect to innovation for export markets. If you're running a company or a fabricator, consider working with a Canadian carbon solution company. Give them a challenge. Ask them to provide you with a plan to save you X amount of carbon emissions or carbon tax. And if you like their ideas, implant that plan and get ahead of your peers and be in front of the trend. Because by then, you'll be able to export your product or the technologies you co-develop with the Canadian company to markets such as North America or Europe, where carbon taxes are making the cost of entering higher and higher. You could also cooperate through a joint research project with a research institute in Canada. You can commercialize that technology into your company or production line, whether in Taiwan or in Canada. And if it is in Canada, you can enter into markets like Europe or the US tariff-free. Furthermore, I suggest you might invest in infrastructure. The Canadian government at all levels is encouraging private sector to participate in infrastructure to help achieve the commitment for net zero emissions by 2050. So bid in Canada's infrastructure projects and take advantage of Canada's infrastructure initiative. Canadian companies like Greengate Power, Engie, Northland Power, Ballard, and international companies like Amazon, IKEA, Siemens, Starbucks, etc., have all invested in Canada for solar, wind, and hydrogen power projects to ensure their brands, service, products, and technologies will be able to have access to the global market under new carbon guidelines. We hope to see Taiwanese companies also taking advantages of Canadian resources to walk alongside those big names, to have your own brand, to create your own market through the FTAs that Canada has around the world. And finally, I suggest you might invest into existing manufacturing. In answering to Canada's net zero emissions 2050, companies cross sectors in Canada have been looking into new investments in order to increase their CCUS capacity, and in the meantime, to expand their output. Directly investing into those companies or to create a joint venture with them will help fill out the gap between the reality and the demand. And finally, I'd like to talk about investing into R&D projects or startups. Our government programs encourage innovation programs like the SRED, the Science Research and Education Development Fund, the National Science Council's NSERC program, or the Net Zero Acceleration program that we talked about. Canadian incubators, accelerators host pitch-up sessions to help innovation ideas to find company investors to help them commercialize their ideas. Canadian Technology Accelerators in Taipei, it runs online pitch sessions to find suitable investors as well. Creating your own brand and markets through innovation and talent. And so I'd say the time to act is now. We look forward to share our practices, exchange our ideas, and leverage our expertise with international partners. So I'd say, please contact us for any further information you need. My team is ready to answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. That was quite an introduction. So, George, is there anything you'd like to add?
Okay. I think we have been there in this beautiful country for 25 years. So talking about this Canadian net zero emissions, what TECO can contribute. The Canadian oil and gas industry is the largest emitters for CO2. Do you know how much would that be? 26% of overall emissions in Canada. So I think the first step that we can help is, to help this country to achieve net zero emission. The Canadian oil and gas industry will need to transition to complete electrification for their production, refining, and CO2 sequestration facility by 2050. Since we've been there for 25 years, we have a very big install base for this industry. We occupy 27% of Canadian oil and gas market share for industrial motors. So currently, TECO is working with the Canadian oil and gas industry to help them to do the transition to electrification. So-called, we can provide a solution for them for the electrification for their compressor station. We can provide an installation of the heat recovery units and continue to do the deployment and development of TECO's high efficiency motor and controls.
Wow, thank you, George. So I think not only does TECO have a lot to gain from Canada's oil and gas industries can also benefit from TECO's energy saving solutions. And so now, Vincent, do you have anything to add?
Yes. I just would like to say here that we, as a LCY group, we redefine our corporate strategy to align with Net Zero 2050 a few years ago. And our vision is, in a short word, material science and innovation for a sustainable future. So that is based on the 6R, sustainable 6R strategy, namely renewable, recovery, repurpose, recycle, reuse, and reduce. So these 6R strategies is actually guiding our companies towards a new net zero 2050. So I mentioned already these renewable chemicals which we invest in Canada, and I also have the recycle of chemicals for semiconductor industry as a EIPA, electronic grade isopropyl alcohol. These are all activities that we are focusing on our corporate strategy in line with the net zero 2050. So that's my conclusion for the day. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Vincent, for your remarks. And we believe that material science and chemicals are continuing to expand into the new territories to help us achieve emission reduction. So if we have some more time, maybe Ed would like to have something more to add to conclude today's session.
Thank you very much, Kwang Ying. I would just like to say that in LCY and TECO, we have two really good partners who have come to Canada, not just because Canada is a beautiful country and has lots of friendly people, but because it has been prosperous for them. They have made money in Canada, it has worked out for them, and they are there for the long term. And it is that sort of testimony that I think Taiwanese companies need to hear, that there is real opportunity in Canada, that there is real opportunities for partnership, and that we are here to help you get that success in Canada.
Thank you, Ed. I couldn't have said it better. So with that, I would like to conclude today's wonderful discussions. And I would like to thank Ed Yeager from Canadian Trade Investment Office, Vincent from LCY Group, and George from TECO Group. Thank you very much. And I hope you have a great day. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.